besides the damage, localized damage that it suffered from falling debris, it too behaved relatively well. Three World Financial Center was on the financial on the Hudson Street side, and the only real damage that it suffered was a large piece of column here. You see that there? It sort of started ripping the whole corner of the building, and otherwise it behaved relatively well. I may add that all of these buildings, when they got hit, were empty, because you realize that people had time to actually exit these buildings, and there were no fatalities on any one of these perimeter buildings, with the exception, I believe, of 90 West. There were 2 people trapped in the elevator, and they didn't make it. Here's a close-up of that column, and when you have a piece of steel sort of hanging out like this, and that was right above the winter garden. Remember that glass structure? And we said, well, the firemen obviously were extremely eager to go and dig up their colleagues and their chief, who was buried underneath the debris of the winter garden. And I said, with all due respect, we will not allow you to do that, because there's a huge piece of steel, that piece right there, that's hanging, and we have no clue how it's supported. And if it falls, it will just kill however many people are below. So that sort of was enough of a threat that they said, fine, we'll take your word, we will not do it. And this was the steel columns from the World Trade Center. That's inside the steel that was projected on the outside. That's the inside. And what you see there, these were steel ropes that we drilled holes, and we tied that back to the columns of the building so that it wouldn't sort of become loose and get out. And that was the way we sort of tried to stabilize it. And this shows some of the structural work that had to be done within the next 2 or 3 or 4 weeks after we started looking at the damage of the adjacent buildings. And this is the temporary shoring of the American Express building, that the floors themselves were sort of, remember that corner column was sort of ripped out? The floors themselves were sort of hanging out there without a corner column, never designed to do that, but they had substantial deflection, and we had to do something and prop them up. And the first order of defense was to shore them up, and the second was to actually provide some steel beams and tie them and hold them so that they wouldn't have a further collapse. Here's the winter garden that was severely damaged, and all this damage was, again, from steel that was raining on top of the winter garden, and very dangerous places. To the 3rd or the 4th day, I was in the winter garden because we were actually trying to figure out how to shore it, because we had lost a large chunk of it. And while we were in there, huge pieces of glass just started raining on top, and I mean just missed us by about 10 feet. Okay, so we realized that the hard hats are not exactly the best instruments to wear and feel safe. So we got out of there. 30 West Broadway. This building belongs to the City University of New York, and it was just pounded. It lost a whole corner because, again, this was damage caused by building number 7. Pieces of 7 just fell on top of it, and it just ripped it into pieces. Remember the telephone company building, the Verizon building? Oh, look at that building. The steel, structural steel from 7 sort of collapsed, and it leaned towards the building itself. And this was a very critical building. I mean, to control 50% of the communications in Manhattan from this location, you had to touch this building very, very gingerly, and we did. And it was a lot of nervous moments, and it turned out to be fine. 90 Church Street, Federal building again. Now we're getting a little further to the perimeter, but you could see the debris. The amount of debris in the street was feet high, and you could see the windows, and the dust within these buildings was absolutely something that was, you can only imagine if you see this in a movie. I mean, that's the way I looked at it. Here's the IRT number 1 train number 1 train and the PATH trains and number 9 train, and all these trains were going right through the World Trade Center, okay, or near the World Trade Center, right outside of the slurry wall. And the station, the tunnel collapsed. The station in this case did not collapse, as you can see. There was tons of debris above the station. And the question was then, how do you remove this debris? And how do you get any equipment close by so that the whole station doesn't collapse on you? And take the workers and the equipment with it. But slowly and gingerly and sometimes with great care and sometimes not really knowing what's happening, but it worked out fine. I need to add that we are really very proud that no one got seriously hurt. No one got killed afterwards, after the attack. No one was seriously hurt. Yeah, a lot of scratches, a lot of cuts, a lot of problems with inhaling dust, but no one got hurt. And people realized that this was in large due to the engineers that were roaming the site and providing services and literally getting people out of trouble. Here's a couple of trains that got caught underneath there. No people were caught in the trains. Okay, the wagons were empty. Okay, so just to show you, there was a little Greek church right to the south of Tower 2, and this is one of the few pictures that exist. And it was sort of a 3-story building, and it was the antithesis of heights. The little 3-story church and the 110-story building right next to it. And of course, the South Tower, if you remember one of my first slides, the whole top of the South Tower sort of tilted a bit, and it landed right on top of this church. And it compressed. I was there right the 3rd day, and it compressed the entire, it just disappeared completely. It just drove the whole building into the ground, and we couldn't see a thing, okay? Needless to say that we didn't find many things belonging to that church. Very few things, okay? I have this because a crane location plan, it's always a very interesting thing when you have emergency operations, when people want to do a good thing, and they want to do it the quickest way possible, and in this case by utilizing cranes. And people would try to get the crane moved about 10 feet because they can reach a little farther. And we had a rule that I said, this is an ironclad rule. No one moves a crane an inch, because if you do, we are not responsible. And we had a crane diagram that we issued, updated on a daily basis, and no one would deviate from this, and they would have to give us the crane movement a few hours in advance so we could go and check what they wanted to do and either tell them no or yes, but you have to do this and that to provide additional structure for the crane. And you could see we had many cranes. I mean, we had a lot of cranes and huge mother cranes all over the site, all around the site. And some of the things we did for the cranes to accommodate was utilizing structural steel from where? From the steel from the World Trade Center. Plenty of steel in good condition. So we would find it, cut it, utilize it in any way we could to span across certain structures that we knew were capable of taking load. And then we would place cranes on top of that, as you can see here. And these are the drawings, and you say, well, these are good drawings. Well, these are hand-drawn drawings that we were drawing, people were drawing. It was funny because one day I walked into our engineering headquarters, and it was an elementary school, and the chairs we had were the little chairs that the kids would sit, and the tables were the little low tables that the kindergarten kids would use, but they were pretty large and they were pretty good, actually. You can actually open drawings. And all these guys and gals sort of sitting uncomfortably, looking drawings and drawing things by hand and so on.